I kind of look at the Bible as one of the good sources for my diet. It's remarkable the mood swings that I go through depending on what kind of food I eat. You're sitting there and you're picking between the healthiest potato chip, you've already lost the battle. That's kind of my point here, okay? If you're kind of getting into the game, there's a lot of influencers out there, okay? Stick to the healthy foods. For thousands of years, human beings have lived without packaged foods. Welcome to another episode of Good Problems to Have with David Nima. I am your host and author of the book, Good Problems to Have, The Anatomy of Contemporary Happiness. It's a new movement towards happiness, and our objective is to help every individual achieve more happiness during their lives, 1 nanosecond at a time. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing one of the critical components of happiness that I discuss in the book, which is diet. It all comes down to diet, exercise, and mindset. Now, mindset is a critical component which is covered in chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8 of the book, Good Problems to Have. Diet is covered in chapter 6, and exercise is covered in chapter 7. So as you can see, at least according to the number of chapters in the book, my opinion is that mindset is one of the most important component to achieving happiness. Nevertheless, diet is another critical component, and so is exercise, which we will discuss in the next video. Make sure to watch that one. So let's talk about diet and what we eat and how that affects our happiness, okay? Now, one of the best descriptions of how I like to eat is what is called high energy foods, okay? High energy foods. Now, there's no exact uniform definition of what that means, but it kind of means what it sounds like, right? Having good high energy foods, really more foods that are as sourced naturally from the ground and earth as possible, and as few processes as possible, or the fewest processed foods, okay? So, for example, what I discussed in the book, and let me just let's go through it here. I have my trusty e-copy here, and we're discussing chapter 6, which is diet, okay? And as I discussed in the book, our diets have radically changed over the last 100 years compared to the previous 10,000 years, okay? Which is, we've gone from farm to table to this kind of intermediary grocery store intermediary. And at the grocery store, there are a lot of processed foods. So one of the best ways that I'm going to sum it up in terms of what's covered in the book, which is, number one, I kind of look at the Bible as one of the good sources for my diet. I know it sounds funny to kind of say that, but if a food is mentioned in the Bible, I think it's a more organic type of food, right? It's been around since biblical times, and I'm going to give that type of food a little bit more credence. I'm more likely to want to eat it because it's a kind of a natural, unprocessed food. There was no food manufacturing plants when the Bible was written. So these are things like bananas, yogurt, sesame seeds, cinnamon, water, beans, lentils, honey. These are foods that are specifically mentioned in the Bible, like an apple, for example. And if it's good enough for the Bible, it's good enough for my diet. Essentially, when it comes to the grocery store, I like to almost exclusively shop in the produce section and the fruits and vegetables, essentially, and in the meat section, okay? I will buy a piece of bread, and I will buy beer and water, those types of beverages, but that's really it. I really try to stay out of the aisles. I mean, the food in the aisles are usually the ones that are the most processed foods. Now, this is not an exact rule, and it depends on your grocery store and their layout, but generally speaking, I don't buy anything that has a list of ingredients in the back. But listen to that again. I don't try not to buy anything that has an ingredients label in the back. First of all, it has to have a back, which means it's in a package. If it's in a package or a wrapper, like potato chips, for example, I will not buy it. Now, there are so many healthy, quote unquote, potato chips out there, vegetable chips, and they claim to have been cooked or fried or air fried in probably the healthiest oil. I just don't buy it. When you're sitting there and you're picking between the healthiest potato chip, you've already lost the battle. That's kind of my point here, okay? If you're kind of getting into the game, there's a lot of influencers out there that push kind of ingredient interpretation, okay? And they even provide apps where you can take a picture of the ingredients and they'll tell you whether or not they approve the ingredients or not, or they approve the product based on the ingredients that they see listed on the back of the product. But I'm telling you, if you're playing that game, you've already lost the diet game. Okay? Stick to the healthy foods. For thousands of years, human beings have lived without packaged foods. And I think that in the modern day groceries, there are so many good fresh food options that you really don't need to rely on packaged foods. And you can kind of shop and eat and cook according to biblical times, using the modern grocery offerings and not rely on packaged foods as much as possible, or anything that has an ingredients list. I mean, that's kind of my main message to you, is that if you're out there and you're trying to interpret ingredients on the back of a product, you have already lost the battle. So I would steer clear of anything that's in the wrapper and anything that has ingredients listed in the back as much as possible. And, shop around the circumference of the store and stick to the basics of anything that was available in biblical times. I'm your host, David Nima, author of the book, Good Problems to Have, where we use diet, exercise, and mindset to help everyone reach happiness 1 nanosecond at a time. Make sure to pick up a copy on Amazon and follow us at GPH Lifestyle on Instagram and YouTube. I will see you all in the next video, which will...